What's up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast, a post-game podcast today. And thank you, of course, to our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity mobile studios, and I got to apologize right off the rip because this was not planned. This was not something we expected to do. Obviously, as you can see, I'm broadcasting from my mom's house. Everything is good. I know I kind of put some weird cryptic tweet out, but I didn't really want to dive too deep into details at the moment. Everything was good. To be quite frank, I'm a moron. And I ended up having my microwave catch on fire this morning. Not like seriously on fire, like internalized burning plastic. But I ended up having to wait for maintenance and get my child and my animals out of the house. And it was kind of a topsy-turvy morning for me. So it was not fair to you to do a half-ass podcast at 12, so we decided to pivot and do a post-game show today. And in the famous words of Garth Brooks, I think some of the greatest gifts are unanswered prayers, right? Or in this case, unanswered podcasts, because we ended up having a really good game on our hands. The Phils win 3-1, and Aaron Nola takes a no-hitter into the sixth inning in what was unquestionably his best start of 2025. Maybe he saved the best for last. We'll get into the fact that, sure, it's the Twins, and they purged pretty much half of their lineup and half of their roster at the trade deadline, but an unquestioned elite performance from Aaron Nola tonight. 8 strong innings. Christian Vazquez breaks up not only the no-hitter, but the perfect game with 2 outs in the 6th inning with the home run. Nola gives up just the 2 hits, the triple and the home run. We'll talk about his command, where he sat and with velocity. Just a really, really strong performance from Aaron Nola, who, as I think the thumbnail suggests, probably was still auditioning for a starting role in the NLCS. So when we planned out the show this morning, prior to me being an idiot, part of the conversation was going to be about Aaron Nola and Walker Buehler and kind of the pair between the two, including Taijuan Walker, maybe into a trio. And we'll still do that tonight. So here's what's coming up on the PHLY Phillies podcast, the PHLY postgame show. We're going to lead off with postgame reactions, as we should, right? Obviously, it's an incredible night for Aaron Nola at the ballpark. Joan Duran, a little bit shaky here and there at the beginning of the 9th inning, but he locks things down, and the Phils take game 1 of the series and win their 95th game of the year. We will still talk about Walker Buehler's bullpen role. And then tomorrow, how about the return of Mick Abel? He'll be back tomorrow at CBP. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into that segment. I would cheer Mick Abel. I would. And we'll talk more about why in a moment or later in the show. And then we'll wrap things up with our Cranking the Heat segment, which, of course, is our check-in on all of the standings. And I think a pretty funny moment is perhaps about to take place between the Marlins and the Mets. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But we have an hour to do things. It's Tyler Zula here with you this evening. Thank you so much for being a part of it. What's up, Futz? What's up, everybody in the chat? And as Futz points out, somebody wants into the playoff rotation. And you're right, Futz. It was an incredible performance by Aaron Nola tonight. As I said, 8 strong innings tonight from Nola. The 2 hits, the 1 run, the perfect game taken into the 6th. All of that was awesome. But I think the best part of tonight's outing, obviously the result is huge, and the fact that he pitched as well as he did is huge. But I think the 2 things that really stood out to me from Aaron Nola tonight, first and foremost, I thought he had some of his best command of the season. We've complained about Aaron Nola in the past. There's been a lot of times where he wasn't throwing enough strike 1. And then when he wasn't throwing strike 1, he was having to come back into the zone with his fastball. And his fastball, which obviously has had diminished velocity over the years, and especially has diminished velocity really this season before he went on the IL. And even after he came back, the fastball velocity hasn't been perfect by any means. But the issue that he's had was he wasn't throwing a lot of strike 1, especially early in the season before the IL stint, which was forcing him to come back into the zone with the fastball or a hanging breaking ball or a pretty lifeless cutter at the time or whatever it might be. And that's where he was really running into some damage. When he was falling behind, his numbers were crazy bad. He was batting averages up in the high 3s, slugs in like the 8s and 9s, OPSs in the 9s and closing in on the 1s in certain situations. Aaron Nola had no doubt struggled with both command and velocity early in the season. And tonight, what you saw from him was command of his fastball, was command of his pitches, was the ability to spot and locate. And I thought when Aaron Nola has been successful, not just this year in the limited amount of success that he's had, but throughout the entirety of his career, which has been a much more successful career, is when he runs the two-seam back on the hands of lefties. So he'll start it on their hands and run it back over the plate. And he gets them to do that, Pat Burrell, like shimmy shake where you pull the bat up and you think it's going to hit you and it doesn't. And it ends up running back over to the back over your hands over to the inner black onto the inner third for a strike. That's when he's at his best. And you saw that tonight. Aaron Nola's two-seam, sinker, two-seam, whatever you want to call it, was really, really good. And then the second thing that I noticed tonight was there was a lot of life on all of his pitches. Every single one of his pitches this evening had a higher velocity than his yearly average in terms of the average on the evening. So we'll show you those numbers in just a second here. I'm going to pull up his Baseball Savant page. You know how much I love the Baseball Savant. But here's Aaron Nola tonight. You see this in front of you. 0.9 miles an hour greater on his fastball, his four-seam tonight, than he had throughout his career. About 92.7 tonight. He sat a little under 92 for the season. The knuckle curve up about 0.6 miles an hour. Now the changeup being up, that is what it is. I love a discrepancy in changeup. So if I could get that changeup to stay down, I would live with it. I think it would be great. But the sinker was up. The cutter was up. I only threw two cutters, but the sinker was up. The fastball was up. The knuckle curve was up. The velocity as a whole was up tonight. And while he didn't generate a ton of whiffs, we'll scroll down a little bit further here. This is what happens when we do live postgame shows. Just 8 whiffs on 36 swings, 22%. He threw a ton of strikes tonight. So he got 20 called strikes, and he got those 28 whiffs, which gets his called strike whiff rate percentage up to just over 31%, which for Aaron Nola has been really good this year. That was really good compared to his numbers this year is what I should say. So I think for tonight, really it was those two factors were key. And I understand you could say, Tyler, the Twins offense is not good. And for the most part, you're right. It's got some good players in it still. Byron Buxton still is there. Royce Lewis is still there. But for the most part, they are a group of either, veterans who have been kind of journeyman guys, like a Cody Clemens, for example, like a Christian Vazquez, who ended up breaking up the perfect game, or some young guys who are maybe still trying to kind of find their way in Major League Baseball, or guys that were, career minor leaguers that are still trying to find their way into Major League Baseball. Like, I think about James Outman all the time. James Outman is a guy that comes to my mind probably way more frequently than he should for somebody that never played for the Phillies and has not been nearly as good as I thought he was going to be. But at 28 years old, James Outman has just not become the player that a lot of us expected him to be when he was with the Dodgers. He was a 7th round pick, but he was, kind of jumped up the prospect boards and then kind of jumped up into getting some significant playing time with the Dodgers as little as 2 years ago. I mean, he had almost 500 at bats in 2023. The problem with him is he swings and misses a lot. He doesn't chase a ton, but he swings and misses a lot. He strikes out a lot, and those numbers just aren't very good. So it's a combination of like a couple of really good players, off-injured players, right, in Lewis and in Buxton, but it's some guys who are still trying to find their footing, some vets who are getting an opportunity to play every day for the first time in a Cody Clemens case, an opportunity to play every day. It's not a great lineup. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is. They have multiple guys hitting under 220, right? So Cody Clemens hitting 215. Edouard Julian hitting 220 on the dot. James Outman, as I mentioned, 135. Christian Vazquez, sub 200, 194. So it's Buxton and Lewis, but Lewis is not having a particularly strong year at hitting 239 either. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was the 27 Yankees. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was the current Yankees. It was the Minnesota Twins. But in a start that was so desperately hoped upon by not just Phillies fans, but probably by the Phillies organization itself, Aaron Nola delivered. And the reason that this was so important is not necessarily for the NLDS, which is something we'll talk a little bit more about in the segment that we're going to talk about Walker Buehler. It's not necessarily the NLDS that's important to Aaron Nola. Now, I do think Aaron Nola is going to make the NLDS roster. Does he pitch in the NLDS? I'm not 100% sure, but I do think he is going to make the roster. Whether it is a courtesy by Rob Thompson to give the guy that's been around forever, the longest tenured Philly, the guy who, by the way, this game tonight moved into second place all time in strikeouts in Phillies franchise history. The only player in the entire history of this franchise, which dates back to 1883, to have more strikeouts than Aaron Nola is Steve Carlton. I think there may be a little bit of like a tip of the cap to you, to put him on the roster. But in the CS, he's going to be needing to pitch. He's going to be their fourth starter. And I think, we could have the conversation about, could it be Buehler? Could it be Walker? It's going to be Aaron Nola. And this was such a critical, paramount start just for his mental makeup. He's a guy that doesn't get rattled easily. But you could tell this year, I don't want to say flustered. I don't think he's flustered. But you could tell this year he's frustrated in the way that he's pitched. All of us are. It's been a bad year for Aaron Nola. But this start tonight maybe gives him a little bit of that springboard. Maybe gives him a little bit of that extra motivation heading into the postseason to say, I still got something left in the tank. I have to locate well, no question about it, because I don't have a lot of velocity on my fastball. I can't fall behind on good hitters. When I face better lineups like perhaps the Dodgers or even the Mets or even the Reds for that matter in the NLDS or heading into the NLCS, think about Milwaukee or Chicago, who they just mash. You're going to have to be sharp, no question about it. But I think maybe tonight could be a little bit of that springboard for him to say, hey, it's been a bad year, no question about it. My numbers, frankly, they suck. But this was the best start for me of the season. And I can use this as a launching point. And I hope that he does, because I think for the sake of the Phillies, Aaron Nola pitching well in the postseason is a huge boost, because we're expecting Christopher Sanchez to pitch well. He's going to pitch game one of the NLDS. He's probably going to pitch, if they want to make a deep run in the postseason, Christopher Sanchez might make 5 starts in the postseason, right? Same could be said for Jesus Luzardo and Ranger Suarez, whether you want to start Jesus Luzardo in game 2 and Ranger in game 3, or Ranger in game 2 and Luzardo in game 3. Those 3 guys are going to be relied upon heavily to be your top 3 starters. If you get into a 7-game series in NLCS and let's hope a World Series, Aaron Nola is your 4th guy. And I think it's going to be short leash, right? No question about it. He's going to have a short leash when it comes to a postseason run, because you can't have a blow-up Aaron Nola inning. You can't have a 2-home run inning. You can't have 4 straight batters get on via base hits or better, and they're all hitting the ball 104 miles an hour, 106 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you find yourself down 4-0 really quickly. There's going to be a really tight window of leeway for Aaron Nola in the postseason, but I think at this point they were probably leaning Nola anyway, and I think tonight's start probably cemented that. A really, really fine performance from Aaron Nola tonight. Have to give him a lot of credit. The other thing that I wanted to highlight from Nola's start, other than just the fact that he didn't give up a whole lot of hits and the fastball velocity was up and things looked pretty sharp in totality, was this here, which is his exit velocities throughout the game. The Twins put 17 balls in play on Aaron Nola tonight. Now, 6 of them were considered hard hit, 95 miles an hour or more. 2 of them were hit really, really hard at 104 and almost 108 miles an hour off the bat of Cody Clemens. But just 2 of those 6 balls put in play at 95 miles an hour or more ended up resulting in base hits. It was the Christian Vazquez home run and the Cody Clemens triple. Also, the pressing part about this that I always like to look into, and I know it's a computer number and it doesn't tell you exactly what your eyeballs can tell you, and maybe a defender made a nice play or whatever it might be. Of those 6 hard hit balls, 3 of them had expected batting averages of 210 or less. And in fact, 2 of them were under 200. One of them had an 030 expected batting average. Now, of course, Cody Clemens is triple 960. You're not going to do a whole lot about that. Christian Vazquez hits the home run. That one was only at 450 because it was actually only a home run in 9 of 30 ballparks, including both ballparks that these 2 teams play in. So, you can't really factor that too much into it. But other than that, it was 2 really hard hit balls, and that was pretty much the damage. They were 2 for 6 on hard hit balls, 95 miles an hour or more. But the better part about this is look beyond that. From Royce Lewis at 7 all the way to Brooks Lee at 17, Everything else was relatively soft hit. And in fact, 8 of these swings were under 90 miles an hour, from Byron Buxton down to Brooks Lee. You have 4 under 75 miles an hour. You have 3 under 70 miles an hour. The point is, it was a really, really strong performance tonight. And again, MP, I brought that up earlier. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. I'm not telling you that this is one of the elite lineups in baseball. It's certainly not. In fact, it's probably one of the worst lineups in all of baseball, just like thinking about it, because A, you saw the numbers, they're not very good. And B, the Twins traded 10 major league players at the trade deadline between their rotation, their bullpen, and their starters. 10 of their 26 major leaguers were traded at the trade deadline, including the 2 that are now in the Phillies, and Harrison Bader and Joan Duran. I'm not telling you this is a good lineup. I think this is not a, oh my God, Aaron Nola's back. What I think this can be is a mental building block for Aaron Nola, which for a veteran who has had ups and downs in his career, but for the most part has been pretty steady in the way that he pitches, right? Aaron Nola's success comes when he keeps the ball in the yard. He struggles when he doesn't, when he gives up home runs. It's a pretty simple formula for Aaron Nola, right? Like, home runs bad, no home runs good. That sounds like very caveman-esque, but that's just how it is. And as you bring up to follow up, MP, right? Like, it's 2 good starts now in a 4-week span. He's not pitched well in some spots in between, but that start against the Mets where he and Nolan McLean were battling, really, really good start. And tonight's start is another one. So, yeah, it's probably 2 out of 5. And in reality, it's like probably 4 good starts in the 17 or 18 starts that he's made this season. But I think just because of it being his last start, because of the onus being placed on who's going to be the number 4 starter, this was a good building block in the right direction. All right, let's pause here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. On the other side, I do want to get into this Walker Buehler conversation. Now, a lot of this was structured before tonight's start. And I will tell you this. I'm going to preface this conversation by saying I have been in the camp that, yes, Aaron Nola will start game 4 of an NLCS if they get that far. Probably unneeded in the DS. We'll explain why. But I have been in that camp for quite some time. It's not changing my opinion now just because of a good start. But Walker Buehler has been really good, and I'm curious what his role is going to be into the postseason. We'll find out more as the week progresses, and we'll find out more into the postseason, but we'll talk about that. We have to get into our Crank in the Heat segment, which will check in on the standings, and we'll do all of that and more with the next 40 minutes here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. And as I said, it's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity mobile studios, and we will be right back after this. All right, well, speaking of Xfinity, let me tell you about our friends over at Xfinity. And if you know about Xfinity, you know that if you call yourself a sports fan, you have to get Xfinity. If a friend invites you over for some ball games, especially in the postseason, and their setup is a total mess, you've got lagging, buffering, switching between apps, trying to find the game, they might not be a real fan. You might have just gotten fan fished and you got to watch the game in less quality than you should. Because if you call yourself a baseball fan, you have to get Xfinity. It is the ultimate sports destination where you can find all the best games and your favorite teams all in one place. And the way that you watch, it's next level. It becomes the perfect fan flex where you get all of the action right in your living room. Plus, with Xfinity's 4K enhanced sound and incredible crystal clear optics, you're going to feel like you're at the ballpark right in your living room. So on top of that, you get real-time notification and live stats right on your TV. It is the best seat in the house every single time. So next game day, make sure that big fan in your life isn't a big fail. Head on over to Xfinity.com to learn more. Xfinity, imagine that. All right, let me tell you now about our friends over at Bet365, our presenting sponsors at Bet365, because whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. And find out why 90 million users worldwide have teamed up with Bet365 to bring them incredible live in-game betting across 78 different sports where they can live stream 780,000 events each and every year. You can live in-game all of the baseball throughout the rest of the postseason. And with Major League early payout, if your team's up by 5 runs at any point, your straight bets and parlays marked as winners will be immediate winners. You're not going to have to worry about a comeback late in the game. you're going to cash out. And how about this? New users right now, deposit $10, place a bet for $5. And when you use the promo code PHLY365, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets, whether your bet wins or loses. You can use that bonus bet money on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and so much more. And you find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli hanging out with you on this post-game show tonight. And before we dive into the Walker Buehler conversation, I do just want to say, I got to give the Marlins some credit. The Marlins maneuvered their pitching staff around this weekend. I think this is great. And I'll be honest with you, if I were a Mets fan or the Phillies were in the Mets position, I'd be pissed. And I bet you Mets fans are pissed because Mets fans are watching their season slip out of their hands routinely, like night in and night out. But I got to give the Marlins some credit, man. The Marlins said, forget this series, this one, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We are moving our starting rotation around so that for the Mets, heading into the weekend, the Mets are going to get Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and Edward Cabrera. And obviously, those are the Marlins' three best arms, right? It's not Ryan Weathers. It wasn't Cal Quantrill early in the season. Those are the Marlins' definitive three best arms. And you're 100% correct, MP. Like, this is the Marlins World Series. But what the Marlins are doing, like, this isn't sneaky. This isn't like, well, we were just really trying to see what our guys could do in a 3-game set just in case maybe next year we got into the putt. Nah, they're trying to ruin the Mets season. And I'm here for it. I love it. And by the way, last I checked, the Marlins were up 6-2 on the Mets. Now, I think the Mets were up 2-0, and then the Marlins scored 6 unanswered. I believe the Marlins just kind of danced their way out of a little bit of danger. But they look like maybe they're pressing Otto Lopez with a leadoff double in the bottom of the 8th. We'll talk more about the standings in just a little bit. But, man, hats off to the Marlins because you're doing some great work here. Now, this may come back to bite some of the teams in the postseason because I'll be frank with you. And I was talking about this with Bill Matz, and I was talking about this with Rich Hoffman and some of our sales team. Kim, I was talking to her this past week. And we were just kind of and we'll talk more about in detail who we want the Phillies to play, like ranking the matchups. I think at this point, the Mets are so beyond cooked that if they get into the postseason, they are like absolutely like backdooring into the postseason. I don't know how much they have in terms of magic. Like last year was a magical run for them. They were playing some really inspiring ball. They were getting incredible contributions from Quintana and Minaya and Severino and then offensively from like Vientos and Alvarez. And this year they're not there. I mean, their big guys are playing great ball. Juan Soto is having an unbelievable season. Just an exceptional year as we expected from Juan Soto. Pete Alonso is still the big power threat. But I think that, at this point, that's not a team that a lot of guys are going to worry about other than the fact that you say nominally they have a lot of talent. Now, the Reds, meanwhile, I don't think the Reds are playing astounding baseball either. But there is something about the Reds pitching staff that might concern teams just a little bit. Like if you think about at the top of the rotation, you would go, Abbott and Green, whether it's Green Abbott, Abbott Green, whomever, whatever they got to do to get into the postseason to face those two guys at the top. And then after that, you're thinking about, Burns in some capacity. I don't know how, obviously kind of fairly coming back from injury. I don't know what he's going to be able to do, but like that dude's nasty. His stuff is just filthy. You face those guys, maybe it's truncate a series a little bit to 3 games. Anything could possibly happen. I will say this. I think the Dodgers are going to beat whoever they play. I personally believe that. I think their starting rotation is stacked. They're going to move probably 2 of those guys to the bullpen to offset the bullpen problems that they've had with Tanner Scott and with Blake Trinan and with Kirby Yates. They'll move probably Sheehan to the bullpen. There's reports that Sasaki might be back in time to pitch for the in the bullpen. See what happens there. I think that they are going to beat either the Reds or the Mets. and I guess the Diamondbacks still have a chance, mathematically. I think it's going to be Phillies Dodgers, which is going to be a heck of a 5-game set. But I started this segment here with kudos to the Marlins for not rolling over and giving up, for not just saying, whatever, their season's over. I got to give them a lot of credit because they are going out fighting. And if they take the Mets down with them, that's a win. And I believe nut job Tyler Phillips is about to come into the game. Dude's freaking insane. He's certifiably insane. The guy's crazy. But he's pitched really well this year. And so I give the Marlins a lot of credit for not going down, not going down without fighting. And if they take the Mets down with them, I think as Phillies fans, we'll all enjoy that. And I think it's a good stepping stone for them. I think McCullough's done a really nice job of getting them to play hard, and I think they're accountable. And I give them a lot of credit. I think they've got a good young core that probably is still a few years away, but I thought it was going to be the Nationals. That was that good young core that comes together, and it still might be. But this Marlins team plays well. And now, will their ownership spend any money? Different story for a different time, of course. But I think they've played pretty well so far. All right, let's get into this Walker Buehler conversation here. And I'm gonna preface this by saying a lot of these graphics that I made were made in preparation for a noon podcast today that obviously did not transpire. So the numbers are out of date a little bit. And it's also, keep in mind, Aaron Nola pitched the best game of his season this year so far. So I do think the question that has come up a lot has been, will it be Walker Buehler or Aaron Nola in the rotation? And I think I've answered that question, in my opinion, already on this show. I do think it's going to be Aaron Nola, and I thought it was going to be Aaron Nola prior to tonight. Now I almost assuredly feel like Game 4 starter, if they get to the CS, will be Aaron Nola. But I don't think that question is applicable for the DS, because I don't think you're going to need either in the rotation for that 5-game series. So the way that it sets out is that Christopher Sanchez will start Game 1 on October 4th at Citizens Bank Park that Saturday. He'll pitch Game 1. He's going to pitch on Sunday, which will give him, about as close to regular rest as he possibly can. He'll get one extra day of regular rest, but it's going to keep him on as close to regular rest as possible. It'll be him on Game 1. And then I think to me, it depends on how the Game 1 fares. I think that they have a plan in place, and I don't think they're going to deviate from that plan. But I do think, here's how I would approach it. If the Phillies win Game 1 of the NLDS, I would start Jesus Luzardo in Game 2. And the reason that I would start Jesus Luzardo in Game 2 up 1-0 is because I think the ceiling for Luzardo is super, super high. That's the type of guy who could just absolutely crush the will of any team. We've seen him pitch really well this year against the Dodgers and the Cubs and the Mets. And I think that's the type of guy, when his stuff is on, when the fastball's got life, when the changeup's dipping down and away to righties, when the sweeper's going off that back foot and down and away to lefties, that dude, his stuff is filthy. And I think that there is a soul-crushing ability for somebody that has that type of stuff when your team is up 1-0 in a best of 5, where if you can send him to the mound in Game 2 and he can stymie the Dodgers or the Reds or the Mets, and you take a 2-0 series lead, even though you're going to have to head onto the road for Games 3 and 4, you're going to feel really good about, obviously, as Charlie Manuel once said in a famous rain delay, wouldn't want to trade places with them, right? Charlie Manuel said that after the rain delay, the Phils are up 3-1, wouldn't want to trade places with the Rays, right? Well, in that scenario, if you're up 2-0, even if you're going to LA for 3 and 4, wouldn't want to trade places with them. Their backs are going to be up against the wall. They're going to do everything they possibly can to try to just stave off elimination. So I think if the Phillies win Game 1, I would start Jesus Luzardo. If the Phillies lose Game 1, I think I would start Ranger Suarez. And the reason I would do that is because there's a cool, calm, collected nature to Ranger Suarez that I think, while Luzardo's stuff at its peak is better than Ranger's, because Ranger is your pitcher's pitcher, I think with Ranger, if you're down in the series, there's a feel of all right, Ranger's got you. He's pitched in big playoff moments before, both as a starter and out of the bullpen. He is just there's a suaveness to him, right? I think there's a calm nature to him. that allows him to just pitch in any scenario. And he's going to work backwards. He's going to change speeds. He's going to throw strikes. It's a Dodgers team again. And I'm kind of banking on it being the Dodgers will pivot if it ends up being the Mets or the Reds or Diamondbacks. But it's a Dodgers team that hits lefties really, really well. But he has the opportunity to go, he might go changeup heavy in that game. He might go curveball heavy in that game. The slider that he kind of found out of nowhere a couple weeks ago. I think that if you lose game 1, then I would throw Ranger game 2. But regardless of if you throw Ranger Luzardo or Luzardo Ranger, one of those guys is going to pitch on the 6th and the other guy is going to pitch on the 8th. The game 4 would be October 9th, which would then go back to Christopher Sanchez because he's pitching on normal rest. And then whoever pitches on game 2, if whoever pitches in game 2 will likely start at game 5 if necessary, because that game's not till October 11th. And that again would be normal rest. And again, if you get to a game 5, pretty much everybody except Sanchez in that scenario would be available in some capacity. But I think you're going to go 2 starts from Sanchez, 2 starts from Ranger / Luzardo, 1 start from the other guy. So you're really not going to need Buehler or Nola in the starting rotation for the NLDS, which may be a good thing. So I think the right question to ask in this scenario is, which of these guys do you think is more bullpen eligible? And when I say eligible, I mean, which of these guys do you feel more comfortable using in the bullpen? And I think that answer comes up Walker Buehler. He's done it before. Obviously, the numbers this year are not good. He pitched 1 time out of the Red Sox bullpen after being mostly a starter. He wasn't good for the Red Sox, point blank. He's been much better, of course, as a member of the Phillies. And since joining the team, all of his numbers have gone in the right direction. It's an admitted small sample size. It's just 3 appearances. It's 2 starts. It's a .66 ERA. And I know that, I talk a lot about expected metrics and advanced numbers and things like that on this show. The FIPS tell you he's pitching better than he probably should. The expected earned run averages tell you he's pitching a little bit better than he should. But he's thrown 13 2/3 innings as a member of the Phillies, and he's given up just the 1 earned run. Now, I think the 6 walks does concern me a little bit. Out of the bullpen, you have to have good command. You absolutely cannot put runners on for free out of the bullpen. So basically having a walk just over every other inning pitched would be slightly concerning, but he hasn't given up a ton of hits. It's just the 10 hits. And you see the 1.17 whip is fairly manageable. And the whip that he's had in September, which is his time with the Phillies, is the second best of any month in 2025. And that little graph that I have there, which I usually reserve that space for their Baseball Savant page, is his rolling slugging percentage throughout the season. So basically, that bar, it moves with the slugging percentage movement game by game and start by start and whatnot. That big dip in or big spike in the middle was kind of towards the middle of the end of his time in Boston. And then you see a little bit of a dip. He started pitching decently, and then there's a little bit of a resurgence. That red line there is MLB average. And basically that downward dive is his time with the Phillies. That downward dive is exactly where you want him to be, in that time with the Phillies. Again, admittedly, small sample size, but he's pitched really well. And my expectations for him coming into joining the team were nothing and next to nothing. Basically, it was like, eat innings, allow Sanchez to get healthy to the postseason, Luzardo, Ranger to the postseason, see how you can help Aaron Nola get there, help Taijuan Walker get there. In his 3 appearances so far, he's been very, very good. I'm not saying that Aaron Nola can't pitch in the bullpen, but Aaron Nola has now made 285 career appearances. Every single one of them have been starts. He has never pitched out of the bullpen. Doesn't mean he can't. It's the playoffs. But every single one of his appearances have been starts. Again, I mentioned that Walker Buehler has already, appeared out of the bullpen, piggybacked with Taijuan Walker in that one game, pitched in a game in the bullpen out of Boston. And then, of course, probably most famously got the final out of the World Series last year for the Dodgers out of the pen. And I think when it comes to mitigating damage out of the bullpen, this is where you're theoretically talking about, quote, first inning. And I know it's not a one-to-one term when you think about first inning versus first inning of work, meaning like the first inning of the game versus their first inning. But the numbers tell you outside of tonight, Aaron Nola has struggled a little bit to settle in. And I will say this. All of these numbers, again, are outdated because Aaron Nola pitched fabulously tonight, and these numbers are going to go down. But this is the comparison between those two guys before tonight started in the first inning and then against right-handed hitters. So the split comes, of course, after the runners in scoring position number. Now, this is not a ringing endorsement for Walker Buehler in the first inning of the season this year either, but a bulk of that has come against or as a member of the Boston Red Sox. So coming into tonight's game, Aaron Nola's first inning ERA was an 8.44. Opponents were hitting 250 off of him, and the leadoff hitter in the game was hitting almost 360. But I think the two numbers that really stand out to me are the runners in scoring position and the numbers against right-handed hitters. And again, these numbers are going to come down because of Nola's start tonight, but Aaron Nola has struggled this year with runners in scoring position. He's a 306 average with runners in scoring position. Opponents are hitting just 248 off of Walker Buehler. Against righties, Walker Buehler is at 55 points lower than where Aaron Nola sits. The ERAs are both similarly bad. Walker Buehler actually in the first inning has a higher average. He's just seemingly has escaped danger as a member of the Phillies compared to as a member of the Red Sox. It's not a ringing endorsement for either of these guys in the first inning of games, but I do think that the numbers for the most part in the first inning have not been particularly kind to Aaron Nola this year. And in fact, when you think about bands of pitches, so it's a 25 pitch band, the first through 25th pitch are Aaron Nola's statistically worst bands. Now, he settles in really nicely from 26 to 50, and then from 50 to 76 or 75 or 51 to 75, he pitches really, really well there as well. 76 to 100, it goes back up, but I don't think in a bullpen role, those are going to be applicable. Of the first 75 pitches, 1 through 25 are the worst batting average, the worst slug, and the worst OPS. So I guess really the question is if he's going to come out of the bullpen in either a high leverage situation or not, can you feel comfortable with that, those numbers in play? I have to be honest. I feel kind of stupid talking about this right now because Aaron Nola pitched well tonight. But I do think in the NLDS, we do have to have this conversation. So the final thing I'll leave you with between these two guys, what is deemed high leverage this season? Aaron Nola has 44 at-bats coming into tonight as high leverage. He's given up 18 hits. It's a 409 average. Walker Buehler had faced 62 high leverage at-bats. He had given up 11 hits. It's a 177 average. So I think in the first round, and this is only applicable to the first round, I think if you're going to go to the bullpen, the first righty of these two you're going to turn to is probably Walker Buehler. I don't know what kind of role Aaron Nola has in the NLDS, but I do for certain know now what his role is going to be in the NLCS. All right, let's pause for just a moment. On the other side, we still have to get into our Crank in the Heat segment where we'll take a look around the standings. We'll update them as the graphic needs to be updated, and then we will wrap up with just a quick check around Major League Baseball in the final 20 minutes or so of today's show. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We're broadcasting live from the Xfinity mobile studios. We're brought to you by our friends over at Bet365, and we will be right back after this. All right, let me tell you about my hometown casino of choice. That's my friends over at Parx Casino. And whether your team wins like they did tonight or not, there's always another way to win with my friends over at Parx and the Parx online casino app. You can check out all of their new casino games like Huff and More Puff and Fireblaze Sky Queen, which is a Bet Parx exclusive. It's part of the reason as to why it's the only app I would ever use to play my favorite casino games right in the palm of my hand. I don't have to go anywhere to get my phone going and play some blackjack. I don't have to go anywhere to play roulette, craps, poker, baccarat, and all of the hot online slots. And how about this? Some slots based on your favorite streaming shows like Squid Game, Breaking Bad, Peaky Blinders, and so much more. And how about this? New users right now get up to $1,000 in casino bonus back if you are down in the first 24 hours. Head on over to betparx.com, download the app right now, and enjoy all of the action and excitement from the casino at your fingertips. Must be 21 and physically located in PA, New Jersey, Maryland, or Michigan for BetParx. You love to play. You play to win. You bet with BetParx. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, postseason's just around the corner, and the best place to buy tickets, of course, is with my friends over at Game Time because they take the guesswork out of buying your tickets. The only place that you're going to get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, with just one slide, fees are always included, so you know exactly what you're going to pay. There's no hidden fees. I know Bill Matz today on Philadelphia said one of the things he hates more than the Bucks is hidden ticket fees. And with Game Time, you don't have to worry about it because you know exactly what you're going to pay up front. And with the Game Time app, you can customize your spot. You can use the zone deals where you choose a section, Game Time picks your seat, and you end up saving money for it. It is the best way to buy MLB tickets as we get closer and closer to the postseason. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code PHLY for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Pardon me for 1 second. Hanging out at my mom's today. So I had to go grab a glass of water. And I don't know if you know, I've said this before. My family's a big Disney fan. A big Disney family. We went a lot when I was kids. In fact, we're thinking about taking my son around his first birthday. We're big Disney fans in this house. I got to be honest with you. This thing's got to be 20 years old. I don't even know when this was bought. This glass here has to be 20 years old. Still works. Still great condition. Obviously, it's pretty worn. You can see it's pretty tattered. But this is the kind of stuff you get when you head to your parents' house, right? You see glasses that you were bought when you were a kid, and you're on the precipice of 32. This thing has to be 20 years old. All right, let's head into our, before we head into our Crank in the Heat segment, I want to take the time to say hello to everybody in the chat once again. Hey, hello to Futz, to Frank Barber, to MP, to everybody that's been hanging out with us today. Really, really appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with us on this evening post-game show. Yeah, LOL Mets. That's all we'll say, because we'll check in on the standings in just one moment. And let's do that now. It is our Crank in the Heat segment. It's brought to you by our friends over at Ace Hardware and Ace Hardware Home Services. Head on over to acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today. Now, again, these are a little bit out of date because some games have been completed since this graphic was created, including the Phillies game, and they are now 95-65, 30 games above 500. But let's check in on the rest of the scores. We've made mention of this Mets game, and it just continues to get worse and worse and worse for the Mets as the game has officially gone final. The Miami Marlins beat the Mets 6-2, and the Mets now stand at 82-78, which means they are just a half game back, or ahead, of the Cincinnati Reds. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Reds have just taken a 3-1 lead, or have a 3-1 lead, I should say. Tyler Stephenson's sac fly extended the lead. They are up 3-1 in the game against the Milwaukee Brewers in the top of the seventh. If the Reds win tonight, both of these teams will be 82-78 with 2 games left to play. And the Reds, I believe, hold the tiebreaker over the Mets. The last I checked, I believe they hold the tiebreaker over the Mets. So if the Reds hold on tonight, they will be in the wild card standings at least for the remainder of Friday evening. The other 2 teams, the Giants, are mathematically eliminated. I left them in there just for aesthetically pleasing. Obviously 4 games back with 3 to play. They don't have a whole lot of incentive here. The other team is the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks are playing the San Diego Padres. The Padres have nothing to play for. I do not believe that they can catch the Cubs. Let me double check on those standings there just to confirm. I believe that they are 2.5 games back of the Cubs. So I guess they do. I'm trying to remember I believe maybe the Cubs have the tiebreaker. All right. Yes, the Cubs have the tiebreaker. So I believe in this point, the Padres are playing just to see where they finish. The last time the Arizona Diamondbacks snuck into the postseason on the final weekend of the year, they played a meaningful series for them against the Padres, who were playing a meaningless series. And yes, the Cubs did win today, so they locked up that number 1 wildcard spot. Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it. The last time the Diamondbacks and the Padres played this type of series where it meant nothing to the Padres and everything to the Diamondbacks went to the World Series. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. But if the Diamondbacks beat the Padres today, they will be 81-79, which puts them just a game back of the Mets as well. This is going to be a really, really interesting finish. Now, I have maintained for quite some time, I think the Mets are going to be the team that we're going to end up, being the sixth playoff team, the wild card team. I'm not so sure I feel that way anymore. I don't know if they have anything left in the tank. Have you been on Twitter lately? I'm sure you have, if you have Twitter. Have you seen like the Mets debacles, the nonsense that is going on in Mets fandom? And I'm not talking about the fake created fandom by like those, like Frank the Tank from Barstool, right? Like that guy just goes nuts for clicks. There are a lot of Mets fans who I think are pretty level-headed, who are basically on the verge of tears. That if this Mets team ends up missing the postseason, I think it would be one of the great misses of all time. Now, at the beginning of the regular season, there was when we kind of talked about like what the playoff teams were going to be. My playoff predictions were the Braves to win, and I'll be honest with you, I'll be transparent. My playoff predictions were the Braves to win the East. Clearly, they were decimated by injuries, had an awful start, playing some really good baseball right now. Not that it matters, but obviously they're gonna miss. They've missed the playoffs by quite a bit. But it was the Braves to win the East. That was wrong. It was the Cubs to win the Central, which was wrong, but a very good team in their own right. They're a 90-win team. They could get to as many as 92. And the Dodgers to win the West. And I think most of us picked the Dodgers to win the West. My wild card teams, however, were the Diamondbacks, were the Padres, who are in. And then the other team that I picked, obviously, was the Phillies. And I had them being a wild card team, but getting in nonetheless. I did not have the Mets making the postseason. And the reason that I did not have the Mets making the postseason was because of their starting pitching. They signed Juan Soto, has been, as we mentioned, has been about as good as you could possibly ask for. Slow start in April, ended up hitting 40-plus home runs, 100-plus RBI. I think he officially has stolen 36 stolen bases. He's getting there. Leads the league in walks for the second time in 3 years, the fourth time in his career. He's leading the league in OBP with 396. He was, other than him hitting maybe 280 compared to 265, he was pretty much everything offensively that they could have asked for. Pete Alonso, again, another stellar power outage season, power performance season for him. 37 home runs. He's, right up there amongst league leaders in RBI with 123. 270 average is kind of where you expect him to be. Another good season for Pete Alonso. But the reason that I thought the Mets might miss the postseason this year is because of their starting pitching. And we talked about it plenty throughout the last couple of weeks. They needed to rely upon down the stretch. And whether they make the postseason or not, they're still going to need to rely upon a handful of rookies. Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong specifically are probably going to pitch meaningful innings in the postseason if the Mets get to the postseason. And if they don't, those two guys are going to be headliners in their rotation for quite some time. McLean's nasty, and Tong looks like, if you watched him pitch, everything in his delivery is follow through. He looks like Tim Lincecum. Those two guys are going to be nasty for a long time. But it's a hard ask to say, hey, two rooks, come on up and save our season. And, whether they get into the postseason or not, those two guys are going to pitch meaningful innings. The report on Kodai Senga was not good. I don't think Kodai Senga is going to pitch again this year unless the Mets make a magical run in the postseason. Clay Holmes, I think numerically, was pretty good this year, but he's a 5, maybe a 6-inning guy. David Peterson, I really like. I've been a big David Peterson fan. Like, I shouldn't say fan. He plays for the Mets, right? A David Peterson admirer from this side of the sports aisle, if you will. I really like his stuff. Really tough on lefties. He's a good, he's a good innings guy, right? He's going to give you 6-7 innings most times out. But relying upon Sean Manaea coming back from injury, Kodai Senga coming back from injury, who's nasty, by the way, and obviously has had some serious issues, with velocity and things like that in the second half. But when he's on, he's nasty. To rely upon him and to Holmes, who's a converted closer, and Minaya coming off of an injury, not re-signing Quintana, who's pitched really well, not re-signing Severino, who pitched okay, but you knew he was a workhorse type of guy, I thought was kind of short-sighted by the Mets, and instead turning to Holmes, who again pitched very well this year, but you're asking a converted closer to jump into a starter's role and pitch, 30-plus starts. And I'll give the guy a lot of credit. Pitched to a 3.6 ERA in his first full season as a starter was really, really impressive. Strikeout numbers are pretty good, but he only has 159 innings and 32 appearances, 30 starts. That's averaging just over 5 innings a start, right? And that's kind of what they expected, or kind of what I expected. And it's why I did not pick the Mets to go to the postseason. Obviously, I had the Diamondbacks, and they got crushed by injuries. They probably are not going to make it either. I think it's going to be the Mets or the Reds. But there was a reason I picked the Diamondbacks over the Mets, and the reason was because the Diamondbacks last season scored like 900 runs and were, without question, one of the best offenses in baseball. And that was with a really sluggish start by Corbin Carroll in his sophomore season. That was with kind of an expectation dip from going to the World Series, or an expectation raise, from going to the World Series the year the previous season. Their downfall last year was the fact that they scored 900 runs, but they also gave up almost 900 runs, and they were one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball last season. They addressed that this year, or at least you thought they did, by going out and acquiring Corbin Burnes in the offseason. And you think, okay, that's your headliner. You go Burnes, you go Gallen. If Merrill Kelly comes back to form, that's another guy that you can trust. They ended up trading him to Texas. But you knew the pop was going to be there. And this is a Diamondbacks team that has battled back into a postseason picture, despite the fact that they traded Kelly, despite the fact that they traded Eugenio Suarez, despite the fact that Corbin Burnes hasn't pitched all year, despite the fact that A.J. Puck hasn't pitched all year out of the bullpen, despite the fact that Justin Martinez, their hard-throwing closer, has barely pitched this season, despite the fact that they traded Shelby Miller. I think if you gave all those guys a full season, that's the difference maker for the Diamondbacks. You probably aren't trading Suarez at the deadline, and you're letting his contract go, and you figure it out, right? Because you're in a playoff push. You're probably not trading Kelly at the deadline, and you're letting his contract go. And listen, they did the smart thing at the time. They weren't playing particularly well, and they got some return for their expiring contracts. Suarez. Oh, and I didn't mention they traded Josh Naylor, right? Suarez, Naylor, Kelly, Shelby Miller. They did what they were supposed to do as a seller at the trade deadline. I don't think they expected this good of a second half, but you'd love to have those guys in a postseason run. But I think for the Mets, not after the start that they had, where they were like 41 or 45-21, but in the beginning of the season, this was my concern for them as just a baseball observer, was that they didn't have the workhorses to pitch 162 games. And it's kind of come to fruition. It's kind of been their demise. Also, Ryan Helsley's been putrid since, they traded for him, but that's a different conversation. All right, that's our Ace Hardware Cranking the Heat segment, where we take a look at for the final time, by the way, we take a look for the final time at the National League standings. This time next week, not only will we know who's in the postseason, but we'll also know who the Phillies are going to play in the NLDS. The three likeliest candidates, probably the Dodgers number one, and then it's the Mets and the Reds. And at the end of the night tonight, assuming the Reds hold on, the Reds will have the inside track with 2 games to play. All right, we got to pause one more time on the other side. We'll wrap this thing up. We want to talk about Mick Abel's return to Philadelphia tomorrow, and I'm going to give him, if I were there, I would cheer for him, and I'll tell you why on the other side. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We're broadcasting live from the Xfinity Mobile Studios. We'll be right back after this. All right, how about our friends over at TrueMark Financial? Summer's over, you know that, right? Kids are back in school. The fall is starting to roll around, and even though the fall is here, and that means there's no more summer jobs and things like that. If your kids are in that age range where they want to start being a little bit more independent, they want to have their own money, whether you give them an allowance or they have an after-school job, and you want to help them structure their financial goals and learn how to build financial independence, right? Learn how to save, learn what it means to spend $1, then you can do that with a free tool called Savvy Money, which is right inside online banking and mobile apps. And I know a lot of people that use it themselves, and they say it's basically like having a financial coach right in their pocket. What you can do with Savvy Money is help your kids and help you check your credit score without taking a hit. You get tips on how to improve it, right? And you even get alerts if anything changes. That's why it's kind of like playing some smart defense. So, they got a couple extra bucks in there if you're thinking about, your child with a summer job that's now off because they're back in school. You want to help them stretch that dollar out until the next summer job. So they have some spending money for the holidays. They have some spending money for themselves, right? And they can do what they want. You can do that with Savvy Money right there on your TrueMark app. Head on over to TrueMark.com or any of the 24 branches to open an account today. And if you're already a Team TrueMark member, fire up the app and check out Savvy Money today. TrueMark Financial Credit Union is federally insured by the NCUA. Again, head on over to TrueMark.com/PHLY for more details. All right. We love you. We appreciate you. And we can't do this without you. So we want to give you an opportunity to earn a little bit extra cash. And thank you for being a part of our PHLY community. We are always looking to figure out ways to improve our shows and better understand how you both listen and what you value to most. And that's why we have launched this quick survey. And your feedback is going to help us shape the content that we love and make it even better. Listen, it only takes a couple of minutes, but it is a big impact. So take a moment, head on over to allphly.com/survey and let your voice be heard. And here's what we're going to do in exchange. Respondents have an opportunity to be entered into a drawing for a $100 Amazon gift card. We love you. We appreciate you. And we can't thank you enough for being a part of the PHLY family. Might as well win some money while you're at it. Big thanks to everybody who hung out with us today. Thank you so much for being in the chat. I know it was a late night show. Again, kind of weird circumstances that put this together. One final thing I want to get into, and as I said, it is Mick Abel's return tomorrow to Philadelphia. And the numbers, they're not good. He's 2-4 this year with a 7.36 ERA, a near 1.7 whip. I will remember Mick Abel for his first couple of starts, especially the one where he pitched against Paul Skeens against the Pirates and was really, 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 really good. You can remember him for the Padres start or the bad start against the Mets. But I will remember him for that really great start, his MLB debut against the Pittsburgh Pirates. But he makes his debut, or his return, I should say, to Philadelphia tomorrow. And since he joined the Twins starting rotation, he's pitched 3 times. He made 2 starts. They sent him back down. He's made another appearance, and he's going to start for the 4th time tomorrow. He's been hit around a little bit. He's given up 13 earned runs in just 8 innings pitched. It's not been particularly sharp. He pitched just 1 inning against the Padres. Man, he's really struggled against the Padres this year in those 2 appearances. But I will say this as we wrap up today's show. If I were at Citizens Bank Park tomorrow, I would personally give Mick Abel a nice little round of applause, maybe a little standing ovation. Not because he was some stellar pitcher, but because what Mick Abel did from last year, when he was legitimately one of the worst pitchers in the entire International League at Lehigh Valley. His numbers were awful. To turning it around this year, to finding some more command, to having tangible, visible success at the major league level in a couple of handful of starts early in his tenure with the Phillies, he was able to parlay, and the Phillies were able to parlay a couple of really good appearances, fastball velocity good, location good at the beginning. And they said, hey, along with Eduardo Tait, who probably is the main staple of the trade that the Phillies made to send those 2 guys, along with Eduardo Tait, we're going to send you Mick Abel, and you are going to, in exchange, give us Joan Duran, one of the elite closers in all of baseball. And so while Mick Abel may never have a stellar MLB career, Mick Abel's not going to be remembered as an elite Phillies pitcher. I will always remember Mick Abel, especially if the Phillies go on to win a World Series this year. I will always remember Mick Abel as the dude who did enough to help you get Joan Duran. And to me, that deserves a round of applause. I don't have any ill will towards the guy. I know he didn't pitch particularly well in the final couple of weeks of his time with the Phillies. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he pitches well in Minnesota. I hope he becomes a 10-year starter in Minnesota, because he was able to help the Phillies turn that trade into their lockdown closer in Joan Duran. And if Joan Duran is the guy who throws the final pitch of the 2025 World Series, well then salute to you, Mick Abel. We appreciate you, and we thank you for your service. All right, that's going to wrap up today's PHLY Philly show. Thank you so much for being a part of today's show. Everybody in the chat, love you, appreciate you, from Eric Gallagher to Futz to Frank Barber to MP and everybody else who was here watching the show. Can't thank you enough. It was a late night show, and you hung out with us here on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening. All right, we'll talk to you again on Monday afternoon. We'll be back at noon, I promise. No more microwave fires. We'll be back at noon for our regularly scheduled show. We will have a week of no Phillies baseball. So we're going to talk about the wild card round. We'll talk about potential matchups. We'll talk about the things that we're excited about, the things that we're, maybe a little bit fearful about. But we're going to do that all over the next week because the Phillies don't have to play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Game 1 of the NLDS will be Saturday, October 4th, and we know one thing: Christopher Sanchez is going to be on the mound at Citizens Bank Park with Red October in full effect. We'll talk to you on Monday here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. Have an amazing weekend. Enjoy the final regular season series of the season. The next time that we talk to you, we will be getting ready for the 2025 postseason. We'll talk to you on Monday at noon right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.